Peace, June 14th, 1943, ADFD. Father Divine writing to Commissioner William Gray, representing the Department of Public Welfare, White Plains, New York. My dear Commissioner, again I have the pleasure of writing you in response to your most recent communication concerning another payment by one of my followers for relief extended prior to her having become a follower of mine. Although the amount is only $16 this time, yet it evinces the identical spirit of Americanism which has prompted the payment of thousands of dollars by some of my followers. When, on such days as this, which by presidential proclamation have been designated as Flag Day, my followers hang out the American flag in front of their homes and business places, it is with the spirit of real patriotism that does not conceal alien characteristics in opposition to democracy. Nationalism creates division, but patriotism to such principles as are incorporated in our American Constitution and its amendments, and our Declaration of Independence, will bring about the unity of all nations, for America was destined by God to be a melting pot into which all people would eventually come to create a universal democracy. It is truly apparent that God is in America. In legality, in business, profession, labor, and trade, in all phases of industry and society, God is controlling the affairs of this nation, bringing humanity into subjection to democracy. I have educated the masses to the realization that there is no victory without unity. Division among the peoples of the earth will only increase and multiply strife in each succeeding generation, and there will continue to be wars as long as division is in evidence. But by bringing the people together in unity, harmony, and cooperation, with equality, liberty, and justice, the very causes which create wars are eradicated. For years under my jurisdiction here in America and elsewhere throughout the world, I have demanded my co-workers, followers, friends, and even admirers to enact the Bill of Rights in words, deeds, and actions. Even in walking along the street together, I request them to enact the Bill of Rights in an outward expression and prove to the world at large there is no division in our consideration. Before this present world conflict began, I had thousands of followers in Italy and Germany endeavoring to carry out this same expression of real Americanism I have here. I am bringing the nations together, and that is why Virginio Gaida announced publicly that America would not be the leader of the world because of me. And this expression of real democracy which I manifest. The Axis powers fear me, for they know, though I stand alone, I am drawing all mankind into this recognition that Americanism is the way-shower to salvation. The people of the world are not blind. They can see that my followers do not lack for any desirable blessing. They know I express the perfection of real democracy, such as all mankind desires to enjoy, and they know I recognize no barrier in universalizing Americanism. This is the medicine to heal all civilization of every undesirable condition, and I shall not cease my endeavors until I have made it available for every living creature. By this all mankind shall eventually become to be even as this leaves me, as I am well, healthy, joyful, peaceful, lively, loving, successful, prosperous, and happy in spirit, body, and mind, and in every organ, muscle, sinew, joint, limb, vein, and bone, and even in every atom, fiber, and cell of my bodily form. Respectfully and sincere, I am Reverend M.J. Divine, better known as Father Divine. In the first paragraph of this letter, we see that Father is writing to a public official about someone who has repaid a debt. the official had written to acknowledge that the follower had repaid $16. This is in keeping with Father's injunction to repay all legitimate past debts and obligations, and many thousands of followers endeavored to do that. Father makes a distinction between ostentatious patriotism and real patriotism, not nationalism. In the third paragraph, he iterates that nationalism creates division, but patriotism to principle, not to authority or force, but to actual principle realized in universal democracy as something that will attract the world. And in 1943, thinking about the post-war years, something that can guide humanity to a fuller expression. Father, it does not mean a sort of flag-waving imperialism that imposes itself militarily. He had opposed military force in the years prior to the war, but once the war was declared, Father Divine endorsed it fully and endorsed the service of Peace Mission members in it, and endorsed buying bonds to support the war. So Father always preferred nonviolent methods, but once the war was declared, it was something different. Father emphasizes the need for the United States to achieve unity, and iterates that that unity is manifest in the Peace Mission. When he refers to followers enacting the Bill of Rights, that typically means going about things in light and dark complexion pairs, to make visible to the world that this kind of companionship, partnership is indeed possible, desirable, and part of the true meaning of democracy, which of course in 1943 certainly still had yet to be realized in the armed forces and in the general population of the United States. When he refers to Virginio Gaida, that was Mussolini's public relations officer, who had referred to the Peace Mission as detrimental to civilization because it practiced integration. Father then points out that the Peace Mission enjoys prosperity. The world knew it had enjoyed prosperity during the Depression through cooperation, and the world knew that even during war rationing, because of cooperation, the Peace Mission was able to enjoy abundance. It was harmonization or unity, enacting the bill, that helped to make that possible. So that's a living rebuke to Hitlerism, a living rebuke to Mussolini and his PR minister, Virginio Gaida, who had defamed Father Divine, the Peace Mission, and the United States. This kind of actual enactment of democracy, of equality, what phrases he uses, equality, liberty, and justice, cooperation, equality, liberty, and justice, when the world will see these actually manifested, real American ideals carried out in real, actual practice, then, Father says, it will be something attractive and compelling. And this was especially a message for the post-war years, when the world was still choosing between authoritarian fascism and moving toward greater and greater democracy. And so it would still be very relevant today when the same forces are rearing their heads again. June 19th, 1943 ADFD, Father Divine writing to Dr. Frank L. Horsfall. My dear Dr. Horsfall, your receipt to me in acknowledgment of the payment of $267 by one of my followers, Miss Roberta Elder of your city, is at hand for response. I am glad to know she has paid her bill incurred in 1941. I am also in receipt of a bill she paid to the amount of $219.60, having made same to the Benjamin B. Coal Company regarding the Seattle General Hospital. These payments represent her new birth of freedom under God, as established through her faith and conviction of God being a living factor in the hearts and lives of the children of men, and in the affairs of government. I have lifted the standard of Americanism by impregnating the spirit and the meaning of it in the consciousness of the people. By this I have called into outer expression the noble virtues of patriotism, faith, equality, and justice. I am creating peace, prosperity, and freedom for America and the freedom-loving peoples of the world by the spirit of truth. I am a rebuttal to Hitler and his devious schemes of justice. It is said, mental confusion, indecisiveness, panic, Hitler once said, these are our weapons. Hitler is trying to undermine the governments of nations by propaganda and war psychology, preying on the minds of the people to cause them to lose faith in God and their country. But Hitler has met his match in me, for I am working on the hearts of the children of men, giving them, through the transmission of my spirit and my mind, the assurance that God is with them, and that in God lies the hope of their salvation. Millions by my spiritual leadership have paid thousands of dollars on debts they had no intention of paying. Millions of dollars have gone into the pockets of private and public utilities companies, and into the treasuries of city, state, and federal government. This cooperation produced in dollars and cents depicts the wholehearted conversion and faithfulness of the people to the cause of democracy. I am indeed a rebuttal to Hitlerism by drawing millions together in the unity of spirit, mind, aim, and purpose. This is something to consider, for the consolidation of the hearts of the people establishes the unity of all people of every race, creed, and color. Millions stand thus united in your midst. There is no division among them. I have brought democracy to the surface by my spiritual activities among the people. I have caused men to consider the rights of another. Upon this foundation you can see how spiritual justice has rooted out the alien characteristics of Hitler, of race hate and prejudice, of greed and selfishness, and how it has put true Americanism in action in the homes, business, and affairs of the people, following me explicitly. Opposition to my work and mission right here in America is nothing more nor less than Hitler's mind and spirit, at work in the hearts of men, although they may call themselves Americans. But they cannot stop me, for I am out to destroy the evil of the world wheresoever it is found, and all who will not surrender to God and righteousness or democracy shall go down in defeat, for we shall have an everlasting kingdom of righteousness upon the earth. Upon this foundation I stand, transmitting my spirit and my mind to the children of men, that all might become to be as this leaves me, as I am well, healthy, joyful, peaceful, lively, loving, successful, prosperous, and happy in spirit, body, and mind, and in every organ, muscle, sinew, joint, limb, vein, and bone, and even in every atom, fiber, and cell of my bodily form. Respectfully and sincere, I am Reverend M.J. Divine, better known as Father Divine. In this letter to Dr. Horsfall, we see another example of someone paying a debt in accordance with Father Divine's teaching to pay all legitimate past debts and obligations. Father also emphasizes the peace mission here as a living example, something that is going beyond the common American realization of democracy, particularly on race and class questions, in 1943, something which repudiates the doctrine of racial exclusivism that had prevailed not only in Germany, but throughout the Western world under such pretexts as eugenics and segregation. Father asserts that the peace mission is a kind of army or task force, radically demonstrating that humanity can live side by side, cooperatively and prosperously, upon a democratic basis. The basis that he emphasizes for that is the basis of democratic government in the United States. The Constitution, its amendments, predicated on the suppositions of the Declaration of Independence. Elsewhere, Father has said that the Declaration of Independence was inspired by God, word for word. And he has said that the Constitution of the United States is inspired in general principle. Father was not very endorsing of the Second Amendment. The Peace Mission Righteous Government platform calls for the banning of private weapons. And Father did not endorse the Electoral College or the filibuster. I'm aware of those parts of the Constitution, and of course, prior to amendment, there would have been several parts that were not inspired by God in principle, which would have included three-fifths person clause, racialized, genderized, and class voting rights. These are things about the original founding Constitution that Father Divine would never have considered inspired by God, not in their time and not in the 1940s. Father refers to bigotry and segregation as Hitlerism, as the mind and spirit of Hitlerism, wherever they find themselves. And when Americans profess to endorse the Constitution and its amendments, or call themselves followers of Christ, if they are also endorsing bigotry and segregation, or indeed racial conception of humanity rather than humanity as family of God, then according to Father, they are manifesting alien characteristics. Father teaches that racialism is a sin against God and society. To identify as so-called white or so-called black, according to Father Divine, is a sin in and of itself. But to go beyond racialism to racism is to enter Hitlerism, barbarism, a fundamentally undemocratic and anti-democratic framework, a regressive and ungodly, unrighteous framework. Humanity is not meant to be segregated or separated, but to be amalgamated as one man at Jerusalem. Father says, opposition to my work and mission right here in America is nothing more nor less than Hitler's mind and spirit at work in the hearts of men, although they may call themselves Americans. But they cannot stop me, for I am out to destroy the evil of the world wheresoever it is found. From the Peace Mission understanding, the Bible and its prophecies are typological, which means that the patterns can recur multiple times in history. But Father has said that the scripture of the Abrahamic dispensations is fulfilled from cover to cover, from Genesis to Revelation. The apocalypse of Revelation took place in the life and pastimes of Father and Mother Divine. Father has said that Hitler was an antichrist, and that he, Father Divine, appeared in the midst of the Battle of Armageddon, that he made himself publicly known between the two world wars, and he suggested that the period of world war may not yet be over, that there may yet be another war, either a literal war or perhaps a war on the spiritual planes, a war in the mind field, a war in culture, but that this would be a decimating and radically reformulating war. Father also suggested dramatic change coming by climate, but all of these things indicate a different future for humanity, and that the kind of radically accelerated change that began in the 19-teens has not completed. And indeed, the same forces that were culturally operative in those wars are in very many ways the same forces culturally operative today. And many of us never thought we would see the overt expression of Nazism in the streets of the United States under the literal signs, symbols, and names of 1940s Nazism, but so it is. But Father has asserted, "They cannot stop me, for I am out to destroy the evil of the world wheresoever it is found." And we may know with certainty that as the Christ fighting the Battle of Armageddon in manifest bodies in the 20th century, Father Divine was indeed victorious, and that the kingdom of God is established and manifesting from within the shell of the old, even now. And though the same forces are at play, and some of the same souls have reincarnated to enact the same dramas of the 1930s and 40s, the victory is assured. And if it is true that things come in threes, and that includes world wars, if that war is literalized, it will be the fulcrum of history. And if it is not, then it is a longer, slower process of cultural war. But the real war was enacted on the subtle plane during Father Divine's lifetime. It is significant that the period of time that Mother Divine was not manifest in a material body was during the United States' involvement on the ground war in Europe, which was from January 1943 to the armistice in 1945, and then the marriage and the manifestation of Mother in the second body taking place in 1946, after the war. So Mother Divine's spirit seems to have been actively involved, returning to the subtle. And once again, that is a parallel with the present and the cultural situation that we find ourselves in since March the 4th, 2017.
Dr. Carlton Mabee, a Pulitzer Prize-winning American historian, offered this synopsis of Father Divine's important contribution.
I'd like to summarize in a few words the history of the Civil Rights Movement in a way that oversimplifies the role of Father Divine in it, oversimplifies the whole thing, but it still makes a point. Father Divine proved that interracial living was possible. So Rosa Parks sat in front of a bus and she wouldn't move when she was asked to go in the back. So Martin Luther King gave his "I Have a Dream" speech in Washington. So Barack Obama was elected President of the United States. There it is in a few words. Oversimplified. Who does that?
June 25th, 1943, ADFD. Father Divine writing to Mr. M.K. My dear Mr. K., your letter of the 22nd is appreciated relative to the payment by one of my followers of $38.50, which has been due you for a number of years. The work that I have accomplished in lifting millions of my followers from vice and crime, and causing them to be honest, competent, and true, is paralleled only by my accomplishments in making millions and millions economically prosperous and financially independent. However, I do not desire that my followers alone be free, but that all humanity might enjoy the reality of economic, social, political, religious, and physical liberty. The spirit of Americanism, when it is brought to fruition with a man or a nation, will produce independence from every angle expressible, and true independence eradicates vice and crime. A person who has all the comforts and convenience of life is satisfied to live in peaceful and quiet resting places, but a person who is deprived of necessities can easily be incited to aggression or violence. Even though Americanism can actually accomplish miracles in bringing humanity into the unity of spirit, of mind, of aim, and of purpose, it is valueless unless it is enacted. For many years we have had liberty, equality, and justice documentally. The Constitution and its amendments and the Declaration of Independence have literally granted the unalienable right of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness to every citizen. Nevertheless, where can you go outside of my work and mission to find an actual enactment of these blessings or an enactment of the principles of true democracy? Right here in America, wherever you may go, you will find segregated communities where barriers against other American citizens are set up because of prejudice against some so-called race, creed, or color. Does that not reflect the barbarism and savagery of ancient times when one nation would endeavor to completely annihilate another? Is that not Hitlerism in a nation created to be a land of the free? Nevertheless, the democracy the Pilgrim Fathers sought, I have actually materialized. I have united millions and millions of all nations of the earth together and caused them to stamp out every alien characteristic of Hitlerism from their minds. This nation cannot eliminate strife from its borders, neither war from the world, until the Constitution and its amendments and the Declaration of Independence are enacted in every home, community, state, in all phases of private and public life, even as I have enacted them in my immediate staff and under my personal jurisdiction. When this is done, it will be universally, even as it is with me and with mine, where peace flows like a river, and there is no end to the blessings of God. Thus, as Americanism is enacted universally, I would that all mankind might become to be even as this leaves me, as I am well, healthy, joyful, peaceful, lively, loving, successful, prosperous, and happy, in spirit, body, and mind, and in every organ, muscle, sinew, joint, limb, vein, and bone, and even in every atom, fiber, and cell of my bodily form. Respectfully and sincere, I am Reverend M.J. Divine, better known as Father Divine. In this letter to Mr. K., Father emphasizes the relationship between economic justice and the healing of vice and crime as they afflict society. He points out deep relationships between economic injustice and racism and these costly social consequences. He asserts that when Americanism is made real, it alleviates these problems. And by Americanism, again, he means equality, justice, and an absence of racial differentiation. At the time of writing, in 1943, Father asserts that the only place you can see this kind of democracy, this kind of humanitarianism enacted, is under his jurisdiction in the peace mission. Not even in the armed forces of the United States was it being done. When Father refers to Pilgrim Fathers, we may be thinking especially of figures like Roger Williams, the father of, often considered to be the father of religious liberty. He may be thinking of Anne Hutchison, who spoke from the Spirit. He may be thinking of someone not generally classed as a pilgrim father, but which he referred to, perhaps in a religious sense, someone seeking a different world, William Penn. And he especially referred to William Penn and Penn's more egalitarian version. So it may not be figures like William Bradford, for example, that Father is citing when he says Pilgrim Fathers. And Father also warns that if these traits of segregation and economic and racial injustice are not eliminated, they will give rise to further conflicts and wars within the nation and internationally. February the 22nd, 1944, ADFD. Father Divine writing to Mrs. Inez S. Perry of Little Rock, Arkansas. My dear Mrs. Perry, I have your letter of the 16th acknowledging the payment of $4 for clinic treatment by Miss Hattie Cripps. My work of righteousness is causing millions to consider the health and the welfare of others, and it is for this cause that the followers and adherents to my teaching are living and working, paying up their back bills and obligations, and are even paying private and public free institutions for services they received. This moral standard has produced the economic independence of millions. When people go back and volitionally pay bills that were long outlawed by the statute of limitations, and even make good indemnities on accident claims, it is pretty evident that their honest endeavors are not in vain. They are building up conditions of success, prohibiting failures, accidents, and loss. I am showing humanity the causes for adversities, strife, and war. I am causing them to see the psychological effect of the division within them and between them. People are beginning to see why there are great disasters taking place in the nation today. There is a cause for the thousands of train wrecks reported yearly and the plane wrecks that are stirring the people. It is the work of retribution, for in this democracy where our great Constitution calls for the unity of the people, we are dividing on every hand, and that segregation and discrimination are so deep-rooted in the consciousness of the people that they run rampant in every field of business, profession, labor, and trade. Our fighting forces carry the spirit of division on the battlefield and in the air and over the sea. Evil runs with men in their fight for democracy and destroys the very thing for which they are fighting. Can one man deprive another man of his life and liberty and expect to gain his health and freedom? Can a nation of people fight against the policy of division in another nation and claim democratic union, yet divide and rob their own of their rights and privileges? Retribution is sure, and it is for this cause that America has not been able to put the seal of victory on the war and come out victorious in the noble cause for which it claims to stand. Segregation is a mockery to democracy. As long as it remains among the people, in the schools, in the factory and mill, so long will the tragedies of train and plane wrecks occur. I often stress these things because I am trying to get the people to see the error of their ways, yea, to see the error of their fathers, and to turn from them. It is plain to see that so long as citizens in this nation can calmly lynch their own citizens of a different complexion, that retribution is sure, and it looks like a good many have found the deeds of their sins returned to them through the brutality reported of the Japanese government. A man does not necessarily have to physically lynch another to reap a punishment accordingly, but if he is of the same spirit and mind and joins in a lynch mob even in thought, he is guilty of the act. Thus my work of righteousness is expedient, that the people might be converted out of race hate and intolerance, and gain a new spirit and a new mind, wherein dwelleth righteousness. This is it that causes millions thus far to go about righting their past wrongs, and as they build to the safety and health of others, they spontaneously produce their individual independence. Thus, the conquering of mortality's version in the hearts of man means the victory over sin, and this is the victory the people must get to prove the supremacy of democracy in the world. Thus brotherhood will be made a reality, and the peace a positive condition among men, wherein they will become to be as this leaves me, as I am well, healthy, joyful, peaceful, lively, loving, successful, prosperous, and happy, in spirit, body, and mind, and in every organ, muscle, sinew, joint, limb, vein, and bone, and even in every atom, fiber, and cell of my bodily form. Respectfully and sincere, I am the Reverend M.J. Divine, better known as Father Divine. In this letter to Mrs. Perry, we see that Father emphasizes the concept of retribution. This concept is not personal retribution, not God sitting on a cloud zapping people willfully. It is a matter of laws of nature and would be more familiar to people nowadays under the term karma. Father is speaking here of karmic retribution. The root of retribution is tribute, and so the concept is payback. It's the concept of what we put out coming back to us eventually in some form. And Father speaks here of the failure to enact true democracy in the United States as something that produces disasters of all kinds, that hampers war effort, and we see that wars after World War II, and recent wars, the United States has not done so well. Father would seem to imply that the reason for that is the persistence of inequality and injustice in terms of race and class in the United States. He includes critical lines regarding the failure of the military to integrate, says that evil runs with men in their fight for democracy and destroys the very thing for which they are fighting, and suggests that the suffering incurred by some at the hands of the Japanese during the war is a form of this retribution, these chickens coming home to roost. Father stresses that if someone joins in a lynch mob even in thought, he is guilty of the act. It is the presence of the thought that builds up in the collective mind and in the forces that create society and the apparent world, and then give rise to increased suffering. A world of utopia has to be built upon a world that repudiates racialist concepts, classist concepts, and division of all such types. July the 16th, 1941, ADFD, Father Divine writing to Mr. A. Cotsworth, Jr., representing the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad Company in Chicago, Illinois. My dear Mr. Cotsworth, I received your letter of the 14th and sincerely appreciate your acknowledgment of the wrong one of my followers made right with your office. The testimony of Mr. Jeremiah Peace is one that bespeaks the thoughts and reactions of millions today. Sin and unrighteousness in the world beget injustice, vice, and crime. It is for this cause that people everywhere feel that the world owes them something, and that the only way they can get justice is to get it through deceit, through dishonesty, revenge, and crime. They persistently seek something for nothing, and pursue an unprincipled path to obtain the things they want. Truly might one have said, righteousness exalteth a nation, but sin is a reproach to any people. In the spirit of this teaching, millions are living above immorality. They have changed their dishonest pursuits, and they acknowledge God in all their ways. This would not be possible if they did not carry within their hearts the spirit of my presence and the presence of my spirit. The virtues of righteousness, justice, and truth cause them to give justice in order to get justice. My true followers will not seek justice through violence, through deception or guile. Honesty begets honesty, but dishonesty reciprocates adverse and undesirable conditions. The concentrated efforts of my followers in executing equity and fair play in their individual affairs are the primary steps in the cause of national and international good government. The phrase good government is one often used in the platforms of politicians and candidates for political office. But the good government that I am representing and working out in the hearts and lives of men does not have any side props of graft and greed, nor is it sponsored for personal gains, for a racial cause, or for any other selfish motive. My endeavors in bringing about a good government, or as I use the term, a righteous government, are wholly unselfish, for I stand in the cause of a real democracy, a democracy that holds no racial inequality, nor embodies the evils of private monopoly. It is for this cause that I am laying the foundation of a righteous government in the hearts of the children of men. I am starting them out in a new field of endeavor, causing them to portray democracy in their individual activities, that democracy might be instituted in all business, profession, labor, and trade. Can America hope for the blessings of peace, of economic security and freedom if it does not follow the law of democracy, and if it does not exercise its declarations of faith in the Almighty? It is scripturally declared, yet transposed for consideration, whatsoever a nation sows, that shall it also reap. Hence, that future America might secure the blessings of life, liberty, and happiness, that it might reap the fruit of international peace and goodwill, that it might express its independence from all angles expressible, it must adhere to the teaching that I am inculcating into the hearts of men. It must impregnate equality and balance its affairs according to the scale of justice. Young America is a term rightly applied to the youth of Father Divine Peace Mission movement, for they exemplify the new America, the America that is unified, that is just, that is free. In short, millions of my followers adhere to the principles of righteousness, justice, and truth, and exemplify the new America for which we stand. Then I say, the rule that works effectively for one individual, that works for millions, will work successfully for the nation and for all nations combined. My spirit is marching on, and as I have transmitted it into the hearts of millions, so shall I transmit it into the hearts of all men. For I would that all might become to be as this leaves me, as I am well, healthy, joyful, peaceful, lively, loving, successful, prosperous, and happy in spirit, body, and mind, and in every organ, muscle, sinew, joint, limb, vein, and bone, and even in every atom, fiber, and cell of my bodily form. Respectfully and sincere, I am Reverend M.J. Divine, better known as Father Divine. February the 9th, 1944, ADFT, Father Divine writing to Mr. L. Hassenfuss, representing the Consolidated Edison Company, New York, New York. My dear Mr. Hassenfuss, your letter of the 8th is received. I am glad to hear of the completion of the bills due your company by one of my followers, Miss Righteousness T. Justice, who incurred same in 1937 and 1940, respectively. Through these acts of honesty, you can see the rehabilitation of wrong conditions in the world. Many ignorantly think I am working for the advancement of certain people, those whom they consider are of a downcast race. But the work of my mission is established among men of all races, creeds, and colors, and my activities abound everywhere, yea, among all nations. If I taught race superiority, then I would spontaneously teach the people of a certain race to exploit those of other races. But racism is not in my consciousness, and I am working as no man can to wipe out the evils of exploitation and to institute an honest government among men. Thus the people are automatically lifted up. They spontaneously gain their freedom, for they earn their rights and privileges wherein they cannot again be robbed and deprived of them. If a man's God is money, then the love of money will cause him to seek all kinds of dishonest ways and methods to fulfill his desires. If a man's God is power, his love of supremacy will cause him to move in corruptible paths of violence and wrath. But if a man's God is the capital God of all gods, then his life will be bent in pursuing the rights of his neighbor and increasing the happiness and freedom of his fellow brother. Democracy's God is he who created all men of the same blood and gave them all the same right to freedom and peace. Our great nation believes in the law of the Almighty, and it is fighting to preserve that law. Men may follow the ignorant customs of their forefathers and fight with the might of material power, but I am bringing to light the unadulterated weapon that will end all wars and end all strife, at home and abroad. I teach men to live the law, to put it in action, to think it and express it. I mean the law of a real democracy. I mean the law of brotherhood, honesty, and truth. What greater weapon can the enemy feel than the consolidation of the people in heart and mind? Men of this democracy have yet to learn it, and it is for this cause I continue to preach unification and to unify the people, that democracy might live on, and that humanity might find their freedom in the real way. As I exemplify it through my life and teaching, I would that all men might pursue the same. I will not coerce anyone as a person, but I will spiritually guide them in this way, that they may become to be as this leaves me, as I am well, healthy, joyful, peaceful, lively, loving, successful, prosperous and happy in spirit, body, and mind, and in every organ, muscle, sinew, joint, limb, vein, and bone, and even in every atom, fiber, and cell of my bodily form. Respectfully and sincere, I am Reverend M.J. Divine, better known as Father Divine.